Hi guys, Ann here. It is time for our February challenge on beginner Lampwork challenges. So this month we are doing stringer control. Stringer control is a challenge for even non-beginners. So don't be too hard on yourself when you're learning. It is a fun thing to do and it's beautiful. So it's worth learning. What I'm going to try and show you guys today is the scroll work on a base bead. When you're doing this and you're learning how to do stringer work, you want a large canvas to work on. I'm using a 15mm bead, but if you really want a lot of space to work on, you can do a lentil. You can use a lentil press to do it. I have, I'm going to show you guys how to do it with a beautiful combination, which is your dark ivory as a base and then turquoise as your scroll work. When you use turquoise and ivory together, they make this beautiful brown line on the outside, so it looks like you've used 3 colors instead of just 2. The key to stringer work is starting with a fresh end each time. I don't know if you can see that. I have cut the end of my stringer with little wire clippers, and that helps you to start fresh each time so you don't have a big ball on the end. You can also heat up the end and wipe it off on the tip of your mandrel. That also works to keep your stringer clean. This is a stringer I pulled myself, so it's about 1 to 1.5 millimeters in size. Not real big, but not hair fine by any means. For scroll work, I don't like to work too fine because then it kind of gets swallowed up. You want to keep your base bead cool. You don't want it to be too hot. You want your stringer to be in the sweet spot of your flame. So I work kind of, when I'm doing these, I try and start kind of mid flame, so I'm not to the tip of my flame here where it's super cool, and I'm not close to my cones here. I would say about mid flame here is where I'm starting. I'm gonna start with putting my stringer down in the center where I want my scroll, keeping my stringer as stationary as possible while moving the bead under the flame and getting it to do that scroll. So the heat, I'm trying to keep it just on that stringer because I found then the sweet spot where that stringer is going to melt onto my bead, and my bead is not going to get soupy and too hot, but it's going to stay warm enough that it accepts this stringer. If your bead underneath is too cold, the stringer will just pop off. So you want it to be a little warm but not molten and not moving. So I'm going to take a spot here on my line that I just created, and I'm going to attach the end of my stringer. Again, trying to move my bead more than my stringer, keeping my stringer in that's what they call the sweet spot, and moving that bead. Now each time you'll see that you get a little ball on the end of your swirl. I like to tap that down. I like that little kind of round area then that leaves, but if you don't, at that point before you tap it down, you can heat it up and remove some of that excess glass with the end of your stringer. You don't have to. I think it looks nice with that. Now this, I'm yapping, so I'm going to make sure that my stringers don't pop off because these are pretty raised still. None of them has sunk into the bead. So you want to make sure that they're warm, otherwise they'll go flying off. And it is super cold here in Virginia. Usually we don't get quite this cold, and I'm out in a garage so I can actually see my breath today. So I am a little leery on whether or not these guys are going to make it to be shown tomorrow when I'm done, when they're done in the kiln. Because they might thermal shock before they even get to the kiln. But we are going to do it anyway. We're going to see. So, now I have some pretty scroll work there. You can see those. It takes a lot of practice. I've been doing lamp working now for 7 years, and this is really, truly the first successful scroll working, continuously, I should say, continuously successful scroll working that I've done since I started. So it does take a while to really get good at this. I have done successful scroll works, don't get me wrong, but it just never was this easy and was never this consistent. Now, you may find with your scroll work that you have a lot of empty spaces, and empty spaces can be dealt with a couple of ways. You can put some dots in there in the empty spaces, which kind of adds some interest. You can leave them empty. It's all up to your taste and what you like. I tend to like to put a few dots in here and there. I don't know, I like empty spaces, but I like dots too, so I usually will stick a few in there. Now I like to, since I'm not really consistent on the height of my stringer when I leave them on top, I like to, for the most part, melt them in. I don't always, but for the most part I'll melt them in, especially with the ivory, because I love that brown line that you get around the ivory and the turquoise. So I'm slowly melting it in. I don't want it to move a lot, so I'm being gentle with my melt in. Okay, I'm doing deliberate melting as opposed to just randomly sinking it in that heat and getting it as hot as possible. So this is what this little guy looks like. It's got some pretty scrolls and a few dots in there where the scrolls aren't on them, aren't on the ivory. Now I'm just going to heat it up one more time, and that's about it on the scroll working. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask under this video on the beginner Facebook page, because I'd be more than happy to answer and even go live if you want me to on doing this, so I can answer questions. So that is it for me for this month. I hope you guys have fun. Bye.